Derek Ellison didn't plan on chasing a thief through downtown Chicago with his 6-year-old son's lunchbox still tucked under his arm, but nothing about his life had been going to plan lately. "Stay close," he said to Nolan, gripping the boy's hand tighter as they walked past the food trucks lining Grant Park. Derek had just picked him up from school and was treating him to a rare afternoon at the park, a break from their routine of microwave dinners and overdue bills. That's when he saw her. She was standing by the fountain, back turned, her long brown coat fluttering in the wind. Her purse hung loosely on her shoulder, too loosely. Derek noticed the guy before she did. "Hoodie up. I starting." "Hey," Derek shouted as the man snatched her bag and bolted. The woman gasped and stumbled forward, but the thief was already sprinting across the lawn. "Stay right here," Derek told Nolan, kneeling to his level. "Don't move, okay, Dad?" "I'll be right back." Without thinking, Derek ran. Years of construction work and chasing after a hyper kid gave him a decent advantage. The thief wasn't expecting anyone to follow him, let alone someone who could actually keep up. Derek tackled him near the corner of Michigan Avenue. The guy cursed, swung at him, but Derek held tight, dragging him down until a security guard from a nearby shop grabbed the guy's arm. The purse clattered to the ground. Leather, soft and heavy with what felt like bricks. "Sir, you all right?" the guard asked. "I'm fine," Derek said, brushing off his jeans and grabbing the purse. "Give this back to the woman near the fountain. Brown coat. Tall. She's probably freaking out." But she wasn't there when he returned. Nolan was sitting on the bench, swinging his legs and looking up at someone. "Her. I didn't know if you'd come back," she said breathlessly, eyes wide. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine." Derek handed her the purse. "You should be more careful with that thing." She took it slowly, her fingers brushing his. "You chased him." "That was. Are you sure you're all right?" "Yeah," he said, suddenly aware of how close she was. Her eyes were a deep hazel, and she smelled like something expensive vanilla, with a note of something he didn't recognize. "I didn't exactly plan on playing hero today, but I've been told I can't mind my own business." Nolan tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, can we get ice cream now?" "You have a kid," she said, eyes softening as she looked down at Nolan. "I do. Nolan. This is, He looked at her, realizing he didn't know her name. "Heidi," she smiled. "Heidi Owens." "Derek Ellison. Nice to meet you." "Thank you, Derek." "Really? That was dangerous." He shrugged. "I've had worse days." "No, I mean it. I'd love to repay you somehow." "That's really not necessary." "I insist," she said, reaching into her bag. "Dinner. On me. For you and Nolan." He started to protest, but she pulled out a sleek black card. The kind that didn't have a limit. He blinked. "Are you serious?" "Completely. There's a bistro around the corner. It's quiet, good food, kid-friendly. Let me take you both there." "Please." Derek looked down at Nolan, who was now nodding enthusiastically. "Can I get fries?" Heidi laughed. "You can get whatever you want." The restaurant wasn't just any corner bistro, it was the kind of place with white tablecloths and polished silverware. The hostess didn't even blink when Heidi walked in. She was clearly known there. "Is this okay?" she asked, glancing at Derek. He looked around, half wondering if someone was going to kick them out. "Yeah, just not exactly where I thought we'd end up today." They were seated at a window table, and within minutes, Nolan was coloring on the kids' menu while Derek tried not to stare at the wine list. Heidi watched him quietly. "You're not used to this." "Not even a little bit," he admitted. "You saved me," she said softly. "You didn't even hesitate." "I saw someone in trouble. That's it." "No, that's not it. Most people would have looked away. You ran. With a kid in tow." Derek chuckled. "He's used to it. He's tougher than he looks." She smiled at that, but there was something thoughtful behind her eyes. "What do you do?" "Construction," he said, sipping water. "Used to have my own crew. Things slowed down. Now I just take what I can get. Job to job." He didn't add that they'd had to move twice in the past year, that he was barely making rent, that Nolan's birthday was in 2 weeks, and he had no idea how he'd afford a cake, let alone a gift. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "Don't be. We're good. We've got each other." Her eyes flicked to Nolan, who was now making a ketchup smiley face on his plate. "He's lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have him." They ate, talked, laughed. The conversation flowed easily, but Derek couldn't help but notice the way the staff treated her. Like she was royalty. Her coat was designer. Her shoes probably cost more than his rent. And that card? He'd never seen one like it. Heidi Owens was not just some random woman in the park. After dinner, she walked them out, pulling her coat tighter against the wind. "Thank you again," she said, her voice softer now. "I meant it when I said I wanted to repay you. Can I see you again?" Derek blinked. You want to see me again?" "I do." He hesitated. "You know I'm not. I mean, I'm just a guy trying to make ends meet. And I'm a woman who doesn't care," she said, a small smile lifting her lips. "Is that okay with you?" He looked at her, really looked, and felt something shift. "Yeah," he said slowly. "That's okay with me." She knelt to Nolan's level. "Can I see your dad again, Nolan?" Nolan looked at her, then at Derek, and grinned. "Only if you bring more fries." Heidi laughed, standing. "Deal." As they walked away, Derek glanced back one last time. Heidi was still standing there, watching them, her hands in her pockets. Something told him his life had just changed. He just didn't know how much yet. The next time Derek saw Heidi, it was because she showed up unannounced at his job site with 2 coffees and shoes that didn't belong anywhere near a gravel-covered lot. "Someone mentioned you were working here," she said, brushing dust from her sleeve as she stepped over a coil of electrical wire. Derek blinked at her, wiping sweat from his forehead with the back of his hand. "Who told you that?" "The guy at the front desk of Nolan's school said you'd been dropping him off earlier lately. I asked around." "You tracked me down?" "I like to be thorough," she said with a shrug, holding out a coffee. "Also, I owed you a second round of thanks." He took the cup, still stunned. "I didn't peg you for the investigative type. Only when I'm curious." "And what are you curious about exactly?" Heidi tilted her head. "You. Why?" Her eyes flicked to the workers behind him, all in hard hats and neon vests, then returned to his face. "Because you're the first man I've met in a long time who didn't ask me what I do before deciding if I was worth his time. You ran toward danger, not away. That's rare." Derek shifted his weight. "You came all the way down here in heels to tell me that?" "I came to ask if I could take you out this time." She smiled faintly. "Someplace where you don't have to chase anyone." He rubbed the back of his neck. "You sure you want to be seen with a guy who smells like insulation and drywall?" "I think I can handle it. I'd have to bring Nolan. I don't leave him with anyone I don't know." "Good," she said. "I was hoping he'd come." They met again 3 evenings later, this time at a museum that had opened after hours for a charity event. Derek hadn't owned a blazer in years, but Heidi had left one for him at the school office with a note that simply read, "Midnight blue suits you." When he saw her under the museum's glass dome, surrounded by sculptures and soft light, he nearly turned around and walked back out. Heidi wore a black dress that fell just past her knees and shimmered when she moved, like it had been poured onto her. Nolan, in his miniature button-down shirt, tugged at Derek's hand. "Dad, are you stuck?" Derek blinked. "No, just didn't expect this." Heidi spotted them and crossed the room, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor. "Hi," she said, looking at Nolan first. "You clean up well." He grinned. "My shirt's itchy." "Mine too," Derek added. She laughed, then bent slightly and held out her hand to Nolan. "Come on. There's an entire room of dinosaur bones they're letting kids touch." His face lit up. "Seriously? Seriously." As she led him away, Derek followed, still trying to wrap his head around everything. Waiters drifted by with trays of hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played something light in the background. He felt like he'd wandered into a movie. When Nolan was happily occupied at a fossil station under the supervision of 2 volunteers, Heidi returned to Derek's side. "You okay?" she asked. "I'm trying to figure out if this is real." "It is." He glanced around. "How do you even know people who can shut down a museum?" "My company is one of the main donors." He turned to her. "What kind of company?" She hesitated just a fraction before answering. "I run a consulting firm. We handle asset recovery and international restructuring for legacy brands." Derek raised an eyebrow. "In English, we fix companies that are falling apart. Like financial CPR?" "Exactly." He let that settle. "So you're basically the person people call when everything's gone to hell." "More or less." He gave a low whistle. "That sounds intense." "It can be. And successful," he added, gesturing around them. She didn't reply, but her expression shifted slightly, like she wasn't sure whether to acknowledge the weight of it. "How do you balance it all?" he asked. "You don't seem like someone who slows down." "I didn't. Not until recently." "What changed?" She glanced toward the fossil room where Nolan was now laughing with another kid. I started asking myself what all of it meant if I had no one to share it with. Derek looked at her, then really looked and saw the tiredness behind her eyes, the kind that didn't come from long hours, but from loneliness. I know that feeling, he said quietly. She turned to him, her voice softer. Do you ever think about starting over? He chuckled. Every morning. And again at lunch. I'm serious. So am I. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, unspoken but understood. Later that evening, as the event wound down and the lights dimmed, Heidi walked them to Derek's truck, parked awkwardly between a Bentley and something German he couldn't pronounce. I had a good time, she said, brushing her fingers along the edge of the door. Me too, he replied. Though I'm pretty sure Nolan liked the dinosaur poop exhibit more than anything else. She laughed. He's got excellent taste. He hesitated, then asked, Why me, Heidi? Why not someone from your world? She leaned back against the truck and looked up at the sky. Because I've dated people from my world, and all they ever saw was what I own, not who I am. And what do you think I see? You see me standing in a park with my purse stolen and my guard down. And you didn't ask for anything, not even my name. Derek stepped closer, just enough so their shoulders nearly touched. I still don't know where this goes. That's okay, she said. I don't either. But I don't want Nolan to get hurt. Neither do I. He studied her for a long moment. Then let's take it one day at a time. Deal. She stood on tiptoe and pressed a gentle kiss to his cheek before stepping away. Good night, Derek. He watched her walk to a sleek sedan that had been idling at the curb, its driver already holding the door open. As the car pulled away, Nolan stirred in the back seat of the truck, blinking groggily. Was that Heidi? Yeah, but she's cool, he muttered before falling back asleep. Derek started the engine, the faintest smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. For the first time in a long time, he didn't feel like he was standing still. The first time Heidi invited Derek and Nolan to her home, it was under the pretense of a casual Sunday brunch. She didn't mention that home meant a 4-story brownstone on Astor Street with ivy climbing the brick like something out of a glossy magazine spread. The kind of place where doors didn't creak and art hung in custom frames instead of being taped to the fridge. Derek parked a block away on purpose. He didn't want to pull his beat-up truck in front of a place with imported stone planters and a wrought iron gate that looked like it cost more than his entire year's income. Nolan skipped beside him, holding a plastic dinosaur in one hand and wearing his only decent pair of sneakers, the ones Derek had bleached the night before in the sink. You nervous? Derek asked, adjusting the collar on his shirt. Nope, Nolan said. She said there would be pancakes. Right. Pancakes. Heidi opened the door before they could knock. She was barefoot, wearing a loose cream sweater and jeans that looked like they'd never seen a construction site. You found it, she said, stepping aside. Not like it was hard, Derek replied, glancing around the foyer. Hard to miss a castle. It's not a castle, she said with a small laugh. It just has old bones. The inside was quiet, filled with soft light, and cleaner than any space Derek had ever stepped into. The walls were painted in muted tones, the kind people paid designers to choose. A spiral staircase curved toward the upper floors, and a massive painting of a stormy sea hung above a fireplace that probably worked by remote control. Whoa, Nolan whispered. This place smells like lemons and fancy. Heidi ruffled his hair. That's because of the orchids in the kitchen. Come on, there's a pancake bar waiting. Derek followed, half expecting someone in a tuxedo to appear with a tray. Instead, the kitchen was warm and surprisingly lived in. A stack of pancakes sat under a warming light beside bowls of berries, syrups, and whipped cream. Heidi handed Nolan a plate and pointed to the bar stools. Derek leaned against the counter, watching her move. So this is where you hide the good life. I don't hide it, she said, fetching coffee. I just don't lead with it. You didn't mention a house like this. You didn't ask. He took the coffee from her hand. Fair enough. After Nolan was occupied building a pancake mountain, Heidi gestured toward the French doors that led to a small patio. Want to sit? The garden was private, enclosed by tall hedges and filled with potted herbs and flowering vines. A stone bench curved around a bubbling fountain, and Derek sat across from it in a wrought iron chair that fit him surprisingly well. Heidi settled beside him. You okay? I'm trying to act like this is normal. It's not. He looked at her. Then why bring me here? Because I wanted you to see it? All of it. I didn't want to keep this part of my life hidden from you. He was quiet for a moment. You know I can't give you this, right? I didn't ask for that. Still, it feels like two different worlds. They are, she admitted. But I'm not asking you to move into mine. I'm asking if we can build one somewhere in between. He studied her face. There was no arrogance in her tone, no expectation. Just quiet honesty. You really mean that? Every word. He nodded slowly. All right. They sat in silence for a while, the spring air cool but pleasant. Then she asked, what was Nolan's mom like? Derek blinked, caught off guard. No one's ever asked me that. I want to know. He leaned back, staring at the fountain. Her name was Jamie. Sweet, a little impulsive. We met in high school. Got married too fast, had Nolan even faster. She left when he was 3. Said she wasn't cut out for it. I haven't heard from her since. Heidi reached over, placing her hand gently over his. I'm sorry. I used to be angry, he said. Now, I'm just tired. Tired of carrying it. You don't have to carry it here. He turned his hand over, lacing his fingers with hers. You say things like that, and I start thinking I might believe them. Later that afternoon, after Nolan had exhausted himself playing tag with Heidi's golden retriever in the backyard, Derek helped clean up the mess of syrup-covered plates and juice glasses. You cook? He asked, stacking dishes. I bake, she replied, rinsing the skillet. I find it calming, like making sense out of chaos. I fix things with hammers and concrete. Same idea. We both build things. He dried his hands on a towel. You ever think about what you'd be doing if you hadn't made it big? She paused, then said, I'd probably be teaching. I used to dream of being a literature professor, but my father left us in a lot of debt when he died. I took the first job that paid well and never looked back. That's a hell of a pivot. Her voice dropped slightly. My mother still thinks I'll burn out. She doesn't think people like us can sustain this. People like you? She meant women who run things, who don't apologize for it. He tilted his head. Do you ever? Apologize? No. Run things. A slow smile spread across her face. Only when I want to. As the sun dipped lower and the garden lights turned on automatically, casting a soft glow across the patio, Derek stood with Nolan dozing against his shoulder. We should head out, he said. Thanks for today. Heidi walked them to the door. Thanks for coming. Before he stepped outside, she caught his arm. One more thing. He turned. She kissed him. Not tentative, sure. Certain. Not a question, but an answer. When she pulled back, he didn't say anything. He just looked at her like he was seeing something he hadn't allowed himself to believe until now. I'll call you, she said, stepping back inside. He nodded, adjusting Nolan's weight in his arms. As he walked down the street with his son sleeping against his chest and a kiss still burning on his lips, Derek realized something unsettling and undeniable. He was falling for her, and part of him wasn't sure he could survive it if he lost her. Derek stood at the edge of the ballroom, stunned into silence. Heidi was on stage, facing a crowd of at least 200 people in tuxedos and silk gowns, holding a microphone with the same calm confidence she had the first day he met her. Except this time, she wasn't just a woman in a brown coat, she was the keynote speaker at the city's largest philanthropic gala. He hadn't known she was speaking tonight. He hadn't even known where she was taking him when she'd appeared at his apartment an hour earlier, dressed in a sleek navy gown and holding a garment bag for him. Nolan was already asleep, tucked in with Mrs. Fields upstairs, a retired neighbor who'd babysat him once before. Heidi had thought of everything. Now, Derek stood in tailored black, watching her speak about economic justice and rebuilding communities, topics he'd never heard her mention until now. Her voice didn't waver, even when faces in the crowd shifted uncomfortably as she criticized corporate wealth hoarding and predatory lending. She didn't pander. She didn't charm. She challenged. When she stepped down from the stage, applause erupted, polite, reserved, but respectful. She walked directly to Derek. You didn't mention you were running the whole thing, he said as she reached him. I didn't want to scare you off. He looked at her differently now, not with awe, but with recognition. You're not just successful. You're a force. I had to be, she said, picking up a champagne flute from a passing tray. They don't let women like me into rooms like this unless I take the whole door off the hinges. You kicked it clean off, he muttered, still processing. I want to use it for something that matters, she said. Not just for headlines. He took a sip of water, then leaned closer. You do realize I'm probably the only person here who drove a truck with a cracked windshield? I don't care if you walked here barefoot. They were interrupted by a man in an expensive suit and gray temples. Heidi, We need you for the auction's final announcement. She glanced at Derek. Give me 5 minutes? He nodded, and she disappeared into the crowd. Derek wandered toward a quieter corner near the balcony doors. The view overlooked the lake, and the lights danced across the water like something out of a painting. He hadn't been to many galas in his life. Actually, none. But somehow, being here didn't feel like pretending anymore. It felt like something was shifting inside him, something that had nothing to do with the tux. You're the guy from the park. Derek turned. A woman, early 60s, elegant in the way that only old money could be, stood beside him holding a crystal glass of something amber. I'm sorry. I was told you're the one who stopped a thief from stealing Heidi's purse. He nodded cautiously. That's me. I'm her mother, the woman said, extending her hand. Eleanor Owens. He shook it. Firm grip, sharp eyes. She speaks highly of you, Eleanor said, which is rare. Well, she's something. She is, Eleanor agreed. And she's built all of this from nothing. Not that most of the people here know that. They think she was born into it. She wasn't. She grew up in a 2-bedroom with me and her younger brother. We scraped by. When her father died, she took over everything debts, the house, me. She was 19. Derek stared at her. She never told me that. She probably wouldn't. She doesn't like being pitted. But I thought you should know, since you're standing here like you don't belong. You do. Eleanor's eyes softened slightly. Just don't break her heart. She's built a fortress around it, but I think she left the door open for you. She walked away before he could say anything. Heidi returned moments later, her eyes scanning his expression. You okay? I just met your mom. That explains the look. She told me about when your dad died. Heidi's face changed, just slightly. I didn't want to make it a sob story. It's not. It's brave. She looked at him for a minute, then reached into her small clutch and pulled out a folded piece of paper. This is for you. He opened it. It was a check. A staggering amount. More than he'd made in the last 3 years combined. I can't take this. You haven't even heard what it's for. It doesn't matter. She stepped closer. It's not charity. It's an investment. You said you used to run a crew. I want you to start it again. I want to back your business. No strings. You build it your way. He stared at the check, then at her. Why are you doing this? Because I believe in you. And because you believed in me before you knew any of this. He held the paper between them like it might catch fire. What if I fail? Then we figure it out. Together. His voice dropped. I'm not used to people betting on me. Maybe it's time that changed. He folded the check and slid it into his jacket. You're serious about this? I've never been more serious about anything. He looked around at the ballroom, at the chandeliers and the polished marble and the people who still hadn't noticed him. Then he looked at her, and suddenly none of the rest of it mattered. I think I'm falling in love with you, he said. Her breath caught. You think? I know. She took his hand. Then let's stop thinking. They left the ballroom hand in hand, walking out into the cool night air. A sleek black car waited at the curb, but Derek paused. I have one condition, he said. Name it. You come over next Saturday. Nolan wants to make homemade pizza. He picked out toppings and everything. She laughed, the kind of laugh that made him feel like the world wasn't so heavy. Only if I get to bring dessert. No lemon tarts, he warned. Deal. As they drove off, Heidi leaned into his shoulder and closed her eyes. He rested his hand over hers, and for the first time in years, the future didn't feel like a fight. It felt like a promise. Derek stood back with his arms crossed, watching the sign go up above the entrance. The letters gleamed in the afternoon sun, Ellison and Company. Contracting. The and Company was mostly symbolic, but Heidi had insisted it made the company sound established. And, he had to admit, it looked good. You're actually doing it, she said from behind him, slipping her sunglasses down as she joined him on the sidewalk. I guess I am, he replied, glancing at the freshly painted door. The crew starts on Monday. We've already got 2 jobs lined up, both referrals from that real estate developer you introduced me to. He liked you. He liked that you vouched for me. No, she said, brushing a speck of dust from his shoulder. He liked your honesty. He said you didn't try to sell him a dream. Just solutions. Derek looked at her, then at the building. It wasn't huge, just 2 floors in a modest commercial strip, but it had windows that opened, a big workbench in the back, and space for Nolan's art on the walls. It was his. All of it. I keep waiting for the rug to get pulled out, he admitted. She reached for his hand. Then maybe it's time to stop standing on rugs. He turned to her, something unreadable in his eyes. You know, when you walked into that job site with your shoes too clean and your coffee too fancy, I thought you were completely out of your mind. I was, she said. Out of my mind for you. His mouth twitched. You always this confident? No, she said, stepping closer. But with you, I don't have to pretend. They stood that way for a moment, the noise of the street fading behind them. Then her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, glanced at the screen, and sighed. Everything okay? My managing partner just emailed. The London office wants me there for 6 months. They're trying to restructure the European side and want me to lead it. He didn't answer right away. When would you leave? Next Friday. He looked away. You going? I don't know yet. She waited a beat. What would you say if I did? I'd say I understand, he said. That you build a life before me, and you don't owe me anything. Her voice dropped. But I'd miss you. She touched his jaw, her thumb resting just under his cheekbone. I don't want to go if it means losing this. I don't want to hold you back. You wouldn't be. He hesitated, then said, What if we didn't have to choose? Her brows lifted. What do you mean? I talked to Nolan last night. About maybe going with you. Temporarily. Not the full 6 months, just a few weeks. He asked if there'd be castles there. She let out a laugh. There would be. He's never been on a plane. Then he's overdue. He stepped even closer, lowering his voice. I'd go with you. If you wanted us to. She searched his face. You'd put everything on hold? I'd adjust. I've got 2 guys I trust to run the jobs. The office doesn't need me every second. And I could work remote when I have to. It's not forever. Her voice cracked slightly. You do that for me? I do that for us. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away before they could fall. You really mean that? I love you, Heidi, he said. I didn't know it could feel like this, like something worth holding on to. Her breath hitched. I love you too. He pulled her into his arms, right there in the middle of the sidewalk, and kissed her until neither of them cared who saw. It wasn't rushed. It wasn't cautious. It was the kind of kiss that said, I'm all in. 3 weeks later, the 3 of them stood at Heathrow Airport, jet-lagged but laughing as Nolan chased his suitcase in circles around the baggage claim. Heidi wore flats for once, her hair tied back, and Derek had ditched his usual flannel for something vaguely European, but only because she packed it for him. They spent mornings exploring the city, afternoons at museums, and evenings in the flat she'd rented overlooking the Thames. Derek cooked. Heidi worked remotely. Nolan made friends with the neighbor's daughter and tried to convince them to let him adopt a pigeon. They didn't talk about endings, only beginnings. When they returned home, Derek's office had 2 new contracts waiting. Heidi's firm offered her a position that allowed her to split her time between cities. And Nolan's school welcomed him back with a dinosaur-themed welcome banner. Life didn't go back to normal, it moved forward into something better. On a crisp October afternoon, Derek took Heidi back to the park where they first met. Nolan ran ahead, chasing leaves as they fell from the trees. Derek held her hand and led her toward the fountain. You remember this spot? He asked. I remember thinking I'd never see my purse again. He pulled something from his jacket pocket. Not a ring box, just a folded paper. She opened it slowly. It was a drawing. A house. A construction site. A garden. 3 stick figures holding hands. Nolan's name was scrawled in crayon beneath it. We were working on it for weeks, Derek said. I figured he should be part of this. She looked up, eyes shining. I want this, he said. All of it. You. Him. A life together. You already have us. Then let's make it permanent. She didn't answer with words. She just kissed him. A year later, they married under the archway at the garden behind their new home, one Derek had renovated himself, top to bottom. Heidi wore a simple ivory dress and no shoes. Nolan walked her down the aisle with grass stains on his knees and a tooth missing from his smile. Friends came from London, from the firm, from Derek's crew. Eleanor gave a speech that ended with her raising her glass and saying, My daughter may have built an empire, but this is the foundation she always needed. Derek and Heidi danced barefoot under strings of lights, the air warm, the music soft. There were no grand speeches, no dramatic declarations. Just fingers laced together, steady and sure. And when the night ended, they walked inside hand in hand, Nolan already snoring upstairs, and closed the door on the world. No more wondering. No more waiting. Just love earned, fought for, and finally theirs. Forever.